recordings in progress.
Okay, so for this week, we're looking at relationships. And what I was mostly looking for this week was intensity of emotion. I was looking for relationships that felt real, felt comprehensible, and explored how people look at problems together. And I kind of got that from many stories. We had a low turnout week. We had 8 failures, which is a lot. But the stories we did get were pretty good. So we'll start out with Thick as Thieves. Why did I close that window? So Thick as Thieves is a story about, thieves. Looks like museum thieves who are at the end of their career. They're here for their final heist, and one of them is inviting the other to a celebratory retirement, like barbecue. And his companion is kind of understandably like, yeah, no, we don't even know each other's real names, and for good reason. We compartmentalize this shit. And he kind of pushes it, and she's finally like, yeah, okay, this is fine. We are friends. We are allowed to be friends in real life. I liked this story. I did. I felt like it did exactly what it said on the tin. It was enjoyable to read. I think it was clever to kind of dive into just using that specific trope of these thieves to have us dive into the story and establish this relationship so that we didn't have to do a whole lot of expository background, even though it winds up being all expository dialogue anyway. It allowed the emotional dialogue to come out a little bit more, which I really enjoyed. I think this would have been probably better with some editing, maybe some editing passes, maybe some greater use of so maybe a little bit more emotion between Colm and
there's no real tension.
Yeah, there's not a lot of tension.
Yeah.
Like the actual heist, like it's a foregone conclusion they're gonna get the ruby. It's a foregone conclusion that they're going to get together at the end and be friends, kind of.
Yeah.
I also couldn't quite tell how much of like this was truly sneaky versus like, are they really gonna like, how risky is this? And is this like a sort of Tarantino style, we're talking about other stuff while we're doing the thing kind of thing, which I kind of appreciate, but was it trying to be funny? That's kind of my big question, because I don't know.
I think it was, but I don't think the voices were distinguished enough to really pull something off, like a good dynamic.
Yeah. I think like the set piece of having people doing like, fancy entrapment style yoga moves to get past the lasers while they're debating stuff. It's like, okay, yeah. This feels like something that benefits a lot from good acting and maybe good cinematography. And unfortunately, this is flash fiction and neither of those things are available to you. So I don't know. It was fine. It didn't offend me. It didn't upset me. It was just fine.
Yeah. I think it could have been good if they'd had 300 more words. So it's really, if you think about it, it's my fault that it's not good.
Don't you get started on that. We are not here to assign blame to any of the judges. We are perfect. Okay.
All right. It sounds like we're all pretty in keeping with that being middle of the pack.
Yeah, just about. I think so.
All right. Next story is 600 Demons. And so this, in my head, is bargain basement kill 6 billion demons in short story form, for those who know that online webcomic. It's about a couple who gets caught in the middle of a demon attack in their city. But unfortunately, the Kathy, the wife, is away from home. So the protagonist is stuck in their apartment and they get separated when the demons attack. And then there's a lot of backstory and world building for like several paragraphs. And then Kathy manages to infiltrate their military secured base that no demons can get into, but she's just that badass. And then they sort of have like a reconciliation, but it's not very well put together because it's so rushed at the end. And in the end, the demons don't matter. Kathy comes across as like she's like a badass character, and I would really like to hear more about her and her adventures. Instead, we get more from the sad sack potato farmer. And I think there was a lot to say here about like the mythical person who lives in our heads that are other people. Like even when we're living with someone all day long, you know, we have this thought of them like this is how they are, and the longer they're gone, our version kind of congeals as the real one. And then when they come back, it's like, oh, you know, now we're faced with reality again. So that would have been an interesting way to explore that. And they kind of started to, but then kind of it fell flat at the end. I'm not quite sure about the tomatoes. Wasn't sure why that was the last line.
Yeah, go ahead.
This absolutely should have started at everything changed when Kathy came home, because that's where the story starts.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the picky eating thing does call back to the fight. We'd been having a fight that stemmed from when we'd visited her stepmom at her tomato farm and I'd refused to eat her tomatoes. And but again, because it's in that big chunk of exposition, it's like I don't know why I care about the tomatoes, so I'm not going to bother remembering the tomatoes until the last line.
Yeah. I think I agree with much of what I'm hearing. This is a story where I think what I'm missing out on, I mean, there was a lot of stuff about how badass this person Kathy is, but there's not as much, I guess, about how cool the tentacle demons are, and there's all this other stuff that, like, again, I'm interested in, but you know, what's the fundamental complaint here from Kathy? It's essentially you weren't brave enough, and then the guy's like, I did my best, and it's like, okay, well, that's good enough. It's like this isn't how anything resolves. This isn't how two people get into an argument and move anything forward. The relationship didn't feel like it was bending at all and snapping back. It just sort of felt like it bended, and it's like, okay, well, this is fine. It's a bent relationship, and I don't know, didn't quite resonate or click with me. On the other hand, I did like the backdrop. I liked the idea of kind of what was going on. I thought, yeah, this is a problem. You guys have a problem, and so it did that. It did do that, and not every story did. Some stories forgot that there's supposed to be a problem. There were, you know, and there was a problem, so that was good. As far as how it resolved, it left me wanting.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so it feels middle of the pack-ish yet again, kind of, if I'm hearing correctly. So
Lower.
Yeah, lower middle, whatever.
Yeah, lower middle.
So the next one is interesting. It's the shortest entry of the week, which it's inspirational action by Chicken of Tomorrow, and I'm annoyed that this one sort of turned up on me, because this is one of the few stories where I'm like, I don't really get this. Like, I see it, but it was a little hard to follow. Like, I get that the relationship in question is between like a creator and their muse. Why the muse is withholding, I'd never really figured out. Essentially, you know, what happens in the story is this creator's like, I can't get my shit done, and then they go out and talk to a representative of the muse. It seems like there's some kind of union of muses or something, and so the representative explains what's going on, and then the guy apologizes, and I'm not entirely sure for what, and then the muse the muse is like, let's do it then. Okay, the premise of this is really cool. The idea of a person sort of feuding with their muse to get something done, there's so many things to do with that. I don't know how you're supposed to get any of those things done in under 500 words. And that's kind of what feels like it happened here. It's like I wanted a lot more from this.
Mhm.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I think this would have been great if it had been the 1,500 words, I think. But as it is, there's not a whole lot to say other than cool concept, wish you'd written more.
Mhm.
Yeah, I really kind of enjoyed the fun lightness of the execution up until the very end. Like, I laughed at the Muse union. I thought that was amusing. But the end just really fizzles out. And while there was probably an ending that could have worked in the 500 words, I don't know what it was, but it was like what he has here, or what they have here, is just not as snappy as the rest. Because it's a good concept, a creative, you could get very meta with it. A creative fighting with their muse and etc. But yeah, I don't know. Not sure how it could have ended, but yeah, the ending kind of let it down. But it was only 500 words, so it's pretty good for 500 words.
Yeah.
Little slapdash, but it got a point across.
And they didn't fail.
No,
So
didn't fail.
there's
Better than the 8 who failed,
better
for
than the 8
sure.
who failed. Though I
Mhm.
do see that Flurp actually just
Yeah,
sent
I
something
saw
in.
that, and that's a tragedy. I usually like Flurp. I usually like what you write. I would have liked to have read what you wrote this week, but oh well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like there were some big hitters who were probably going to bring and nail the relationships. Like that's what they do. And
Yeah.
they just didn't get it in.
Yeah. And they had 3 extra hours
It's true.
than usual, but I don't know. Anyway, Comfort Food by Nay.
Mhm.
I'm going to start with what I really liked about this piece, which is I liked the setting. Nay is really good at scene setting and describing things that you can very much see. The tactile, the sensory experience is very much there, of being in a borrowed kitchen, making pasta sauce is very present. And then I want to care so bad about what's going on with Tony and his problems at work. And those are real problems that he's suffering from. But I don't know why there just wasn't. It didn't hook me. And I don't have
what you were looking for was interrelationship problems. You wanted there to be some element of tension potentially between Tony and the person he's talking to. And the tension that I got was like, I'm nervous to do this because you're going to be like this militant feminist who's going to be like, men don't have problems. And then she ends up being like, no, I'm actually a decent person. And like, men can have problems. Like that was it. Everything else was like, it's all about Tony. It's the Tony show. I'm sad Tony. I'm hunky sad Tony. And it's like, hey, I'm a really good friend and I'm going to be super nice to you. So what we got was like, I would like to be friends with both of these people. They seem like nice people. And that's fine. There's not much going on between them though.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I don't see the tension of is this relationship salvageable was resolved a little too quickly. And wasn't
I never even had to ask that question. At least it didn't occur to me to ask that question.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, and the bits and pieces kind of all work in various ways, but they don't all seem to relate to each other. So like the cooking at the beginning and the enjoying of the food at the end were solid. But in the middle, there's just Tony and his problem, and it has almost absolutely nothing to do with the cooking. It just was sort of a way to get her in his apartment. And like I also kind of wanted his problem to have something to do with grief. not necessarily, about his grandmother, but like a side effect from his grief, such that it worked a little better and flowed a little better. Otherwise, it's just a little, eh.
I
And the
think that's
problem that he
oh, go ahead.
faces could have really been any sort of problem. It could have been like problems with, he can't focus on his work, and that's causing issues. And
Yeah. The theme of there being something cool that could sort of be an analogy for the relationship, but it doesn't happen, is a common thing this week. I don't
Yes.
like, people set up some really cool stuff and it's like, let's take this and do it there, and then it doesn't happen. This is an example of that, I think, as well. So
Yeah. Yeah, I very much agree.
Mhm. All right, so there we are with Nay's comfort food. Again, the window dressing and everything around it, I think I agree with you. It sets the table perfectly. So there is that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, who's got the pleasure here? Penguin,
I
I think.
do.
Okay.
So this story is of Babes and Bras, which is the Man Called M's entry for the week. And so he had actually asked for a flash rule, which wasn't something that we were necessarily giving this week, but would if, somebody needed it. So his was to talk about, to write a story about competing sorority, fraternity, party planning. And he leaned really heavily into stereotypes of fraternity and sorority types in this story. It's kind of like, I described it as sort of the Cliff Notes version of a movie where you just hit the highlights and it's like, these are the most awesome parts about this. And it doesn't quite, as you're watching it, you can't quite get the gist of the story. You don't feel invested in the story. So it's kind of just like a scene with Maddie. Those fraternity guys are terrible. Scene with Jake, those sorority ladies are awful. Now they have to form a committee to plan a party, and then they plan the party the day before and they decide to incorporate different elements from what the sorority girls want and what the fraternity boys want, and then it's awesome.
Certain
and they
events.
have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And they get sprayed with mustard and ketchup. Yes, so that's the story. What did you think? I'm dying to know.
So here's the thing for me, like, it made me laugh a lot. Not necessarily for the intended reasons. I actually recorded everything this week and I'm going to post those too, so you'll be able to hear like just how a first impression, reader reads them. And I see. Okay, so what did it do right? It had two people ostensibly in some kind of a relationship. There was a problem. Did they really like each other very much, or was there anything meaningful beforehand? It doesn't really seem like it. They try to solve a problem, and then we get told over and over again how happy they are. Okay. I'll be honest, and I'm not one to quibble on like syntax or grammar. You gotta lay off the exclamation points. That's what killed me. They were so inappropriate and they were so frequent, and it really disrupted me. Are there other things to talk about here? Yes, but if we're talking about like a quick fix, get rid of all of them. Never use them again. And then when you edit, find your favorite sentence that you think needs one and use one. I believe, and I'm positive I'm right about this, there were more exclamation points in this and all of the other stories combined times 2. That's a problem. Like, let your writing just kind of be. So quick fix that will yield big dividends. Just going to put that out there.
Yeah, I think this is another. So I can tell in this story that you are listening to what people are saying. You are not doing. This story does not as egregiously have that thing where you're giving everybody weird dialogue tags. So your characters don't sound quite as unhinged because they're not constantly exclaiming or shouting or they're saying and asking, and we're seeing people be a little bit more chill. But again, the exclamation points, as Chili says, that's also a lot. But this is just another great example of, I feel like you have to know the rules before you can break them, because there's some seriously funny stuff in here, like hell, Jake and Maddie simultaneously say at the same time. Which, first of all, I don't know what tense you're operating in here, because previously Jimmy Greek entered and then Jake and Maddie simultaneously say. So I don't, or is this present tense? Is this past tense? Pick one. Stop flipping them around. But secondly, because this story is so short and because there are all of these other mistakes with tenses and with grammar, I don't know that you mean that line to be funny. I
didn't think that it was supposed to be. That just, yeah.
Yeah. And I also agree with Penguin. Penguin, you said that it's like a recap. Like, here are all the highlights, and M had 500 more words to use. We didn't need this to just be the highlights.
Yeah, as far as like the whole, show don't tell adage, which we beat to death a little bit, and I think is, fortunately getting a bit of pushback. You gotta, again, know the rules before you can break them. Just look at the sentence that ends the story, or at least the fragment. And both Jake and Maddie wanted more of it in the future. If you have to tell us that, then you haven't shown us why that is the case. We should already know that. You should have to encapsulate it. And there's a lot of that throughout the story. You're just telling us things and using words that people wouldn't, use in real life in dialogue. You know what? I'm actually having a great time. That's not like a lot of stuff like that, where it's just sort of just cut that stuff away. We don't need it. Just show us what you're doing. It's not hard to envision a condiment fight, and we know what that looks like. We can see it. It's like, I don't need help. And I imagine, yeah, I probably would enjoy that, I guess. Like, I don't know. I found it a bit messy, but I also, look, I'll be honest with you. I enjoyed reading it, and I will remember this story. So it's got that going for it. So
Yeah.
There's that. Apparently this was also based off of a real event that M posted in the Discord. So that's interesting. Don't feel you need to do that, M, but it's okay to draw inspiration from places. So that's fine. Yeah. All right. So as far as where that falls, I guess we'll get there, but should we just move on?
Yeah.
Anything left to be said?
Yeah. Who's I think
Chili's
Chili.
turn.
Yeah.
Yep.
Where are we? We're at Jelly. Okay, so we'll go over the good first. Very cool that you decided to incorporate the squidlings from Splatoon in your story. That's very nice. They're not just regular people. That's interesting. It's set at the backdrop of what I think is some kind of surfing competition that draws the ire of people protesting that this surfing competition is messing with the mollusks, which, when you read a story out loud, you learn how annoying it is to say that word over and over and over again. It's not a fun word to say, mollusks. I didn't really understand what was happening. I'll just be honest. Like, I couldn't follow much of the action. I guess the tension is all about whether this contest happens here or not. I didn't get the sense that any of these people really liked each other all that much. They were told they're friends. I don't. This thing suffered from the same thing that Thick as Thieves did. Was this supposed to be funny? I get the impression it was. I mean, the "are we jelly" question, and then of course we're jelly. At that point, when I read that, I'm like, oh shit, is this a comedy? And then I started over again. I kind of reread a bit, and I was like, no, I don't know. I need help with this one. I'm falling on the ones that didn't make very much sense to me, so I apologize. What did you guys think of this?
I think it was a lot like Staggy's in that it juxtaposes the dialogue with the actions that are occurring, because it sets up this really awesome solar surfing competition with, protesters out there saying that they don't want them to hurt the mollusks, and etc. But then, and they're also these jellyfish type creatures, but then they're really just talking about it's a Kelly, the main surfer lady, tentacle person, is crushing on Jesse, but she's not quite admitting it to herself. But Gemma, the very supportive but radical best friend, is like, do you really like that guy? He's kind of a jock and maybe a jerk. And then, they talk and Gemma's like, okay, he's not that bad, so I guess you can go after him. But like, what I found not great about this is that we don't get enough inside Kelly's head. So I don't know what's really important to her. Is it the surfing competition? Is it her friendship? Is it her crush? What does she actually want out of this situation? And that's what I didn't quite find here.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know because I don't know what Kelly really wants. I don't know what I, as the reader, am supposed to really want. I don't know what I'm supposed to want for Kelly. I don't get a sense that she's actually being pulled between her relationships, between a surfing competition, her identity as a surfer, her relationship with Gemma, or her relationship with Jesse. Like, all of those things could have pulled her in one direction or another, and they just kind of don't. I do like the weird little squid people. I've never played Splatoon, so, but
I could be wrong. Sorry if I'm wrong about that, Yorishi.
I like the little Valella people. So there's that. But again, it's another one where the set dressing is really cool, kind of cool, and the story itself doesn't live up to its window dressing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Soggy middle.
Soggy middle.
Soggy middle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're at the top of the rotation.
Yeah, with Cutouts by Taste, which, okay, if Yoroichi's story was soggy middle, I think Taste's is, probably, this is, crunchy middle. It's better baked.
Okay.
I liked it. I liked reading this one. I think that the thing that fails this is a lack of names. Whereas in Thick as Thieves, we had like too many names almost to keep everyone straight, and everybody had fake names, and they're fake names for the people who weren't in the story. This one, I kind of wish we just heard that it's, I guess what's happening is the main character, Andrew is going to visit his mother and get a haircut from his childhood barber.
Oh.
Yes.
Is that what you think too, Penguin?
Yes.
Okay, then that's, I guess, what happened. I thought it might be a funeral or a first date. I couldn't really tell.
There was a funeral in a flashback section.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure, but okay, that I suppose makes sense.
And so there's a lot of cool elements here with grief over everyone's getting older. Everyone's like, the barber starting to forget his name.
Mm-hmm. Fumbling with his tools. His mother is kind of judgmental and unpleasant to deal with. There's a train, I think.
Is that what the 20 is?
I think the 20 is a train. I think the 20 is a train or a light rail.
That helps so much.
20. I assume the 20 was like a route, like I-95 or something.
Yeah. Broad was the street. I got that. But the 20, I was like, is this like a
okay? So yeah,
house?
I think it's really, names are a thing. I think the important thing here is that, like, it's not just names, it's a bunch of small stuff, and I have no idea how much better this story is than it is, because I like this quite a bit, but I wasn't really sure what I was reading. And it's funny because it feels like with only a couple of small corrections, I might have been able to get it a lot better, and this might have been my favorite.
Yeah, this had the opposite problem that all of the others had, which is the relationships are really clear and punchy, and the set dressing is kind of baffling.
Yeah,
I don't.
this would, I think, like another set of eyes, or even just like stepping outside of yourself and just like asking, like, would someone who doesn't know what any of this stuff is, would they get it? And then this
Yeah.
story, I think, becomes like really good.
Yeah.
But I liked reading about it. It was cool. It was a easy enough read. Also, the way too, like, we don't need all that italicisms. Again, I don't want to quibble on stuff, but like, it's clear that we're cutting back from beat to beat. And honestly, reading that much curly shit ended up screwing with my head. So just don't do that. Like, it's not necessary. You didn't need to. It was very clear what was happening. So that's just a quick thing.
Yeah.
Penguin, I don't think, yeah.
Oh, that's okay. No one needs to hear from me. No, I was gonna say, like, the first section, I was like, I'm kind of confused, but I'm assuming it's gonna get better. The next section in the barbershop, I was like, this is perfect. Like, it is that I think it's what he was trying to go for the whole thing, is like sort of vague, but enough detail that you're getting it. And so that second section really nailed it. And I was like, yes. But then, like, each successive section that wasn't in the barbershop didn't really help explain that first section. So, like, by the end, I thought I had gotten most of the pieces together, but like, they still weren't as tight. They weren't as nice. And I'm still left with some questions, but I think with a little editing, like you guys were saying, like, this could be really, really good.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, so yeah, crunchy middle, soggy upper middle, whatever you want to say. So somewhere in that weird story pie. Okay.
So yeah, Penguin, you want to look at Shark versus Platypus?
Shark versus Platypus by the Chucker of Chairs. This story is a story about a mother and a husband, like a husband and wife, and then their daughter, and their daughter is bonding with her dad over some sort of sports ball in the future sports ball. And their mother likes this other thing about wizard loops. And then it's just about wizard loops versus a sports ball. And then the daughter gets a boyfriend, and he doesn't like sports ball. And that's basically it. I always appreciate Chair Chucker's simplicity in his stories and how, like, straightforward that he is. And I love a simple story, but this is too simple. It's basically just telling us everything that's happening. The dialogue is really wooden. It's very predictable. There's no tension at all. And I'm not sure that it works.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't.
Okay.
Like, I really, like, honestly, this was probably my least favorite of the week. Chair Chucker stories are almost rarely without charm. This was charmless. It was formulaic. It was everything that we've seen before in every movie, setting up a person, bringing home a person. And it suffers, I think, in the most big way of, hey, we have this cool thing where sharks and platypi fight. Okay, so is that real? Like, are these teams wearing those clothes? It doesn't seem like it. There's like little hints. And every time it starts, it ends, and it cuts away to after the fact. And again, this is a great place to have a metaphor for what's going on here, and we don't get any of it. And the dialogue, again, as you said, wooden, not funny. Like, Chair Chucker can do better than this. It felt rushed. It felt, I was left wanting quite a bit as I was reading it, and I was like, what? Come on, there's got to be something more happening here, something funny, something gripping, something tense. Never got there for me. So yeah.
Yep. I didn't hate it. So I didn't mark it down quite as much as you guys, but it wasn't particularly fun to read. It wasn't particularly, I didn't have any investment in any of the characters. I didn't really understand what Wizard Loop was. I didn't really understand what the laser sharks were doing, other than the fact that it was dangerous.
Sharks with freaking laser beams attached to their freaking heads.
Yeah, that's great. But she likes platypuses, and that's a problem. Gosh darn it. This didn't. I feel like tried to show a whole bunch of different relationships and then just didn't end up showing any of them.
Like it could have gone places. There were options that could have, there could have been like some subtext between like a happy marriage, even though you like such disparate things, but it would take too much work with what is already here. So
yeah, there were places it could have gone, but unlike in cutouts, unlike in even in like in inspirational action earlier, I don't care as much. I just like I'm not interested in this family's sports thing. So sorry, Chair Chucker, this didn't go where you wanted it to go.
It didn't seem like it.
But you wrote a story, so
Did write a story. Didn't fail.
didn't fail.
That's off to you for that. I think we're at the top, right?
No, I think this one's you.
Oh, no.
actually.
you get to talk about
why do I
this.
get all the weird ones that I don't understand?
I'll take the weird one.
I'll
take the weird one.
Okay, look, I have some nice things to say about this, but boy, I don't know what the hell the story is. So, okay, can you take this, head judge, please?
Yeah, I'll take this.
You can have Sin Bin, which is very up your alley, Chili.
Yeah.
I like Sin Bin.
So in the nod, we have this weird guy who has a conjoined twin who is leading a cult about endurance through pain and
Struggle.
survival. and
Thank you so
struggle.
much for handling this.
Yeah. And
He hears the conjoined twin in his head.
the conjoined twin talks to him in his head. And so he meets this other guy who's like, no, I get it. I get what it's like to have a deformity. Check out my fucked up hand. This guy maimed me. He sucks. Fuck him. And then he's like, well, maybe this guy doesn't suck because I think I was able to convert him to the cult. And then Vulak meets him and he's doing a weird like endurance through like fucked up binging and purging endurance of ecstasy as opposed to endurance of pain thing, and which is almost cool and almost explored. And then Vulak is just like, fuck you, I'm going to beat the shit out of you.
Did someone get eaten? Did like the thing eat someone? Did that not happen?
Not sure, unclear.
Okay.
Like
Okay.
I think it was a metaphorical eating.
Okay.
Like, yes, feast on the
I mean, I
suffering
haven't
of
read a Vor
another
story
dude.
in a while. It would have been fine to have one. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So real quick, because I did pass the ball in a very cowardly way to you. I think this and the Muse story were probably the coolest relationships. It's cool that like
Yes.
it's got some weird conjoint, like that's enough. Whatever the hell else is going on, we didn't need it. Like this is a cool thing you've got going on here. Work with that. Why do we need death cults? And I don't know, because then I got lost.
Yeah.
Well, I think
you
the
explained
death
it the
cult.
exact way I would have. So
I think the death cult works because like he's clearly been inspired to tell, to preach because of his twin. And so I think it works with that. But then the parishioner who convinces him to come meet the rich lord who is, who doesn't quite get the suffering. He does an inversion of what they're actually preaching. And Bulak does not take kindly to that. And that was just too much for 1,500 words. Like this is an attention getting concept right here. And I would love to see this in longer form, but it just, didn't have the space it needed to settle in. But it was creepy, and even just a few words by the first paragraph, I was hooked.
yeah. No, like there's no way in my mind this is the kind of story that hits even remotely close to like a DM or a Lost, because like it did evoke a ton of stuff, and some of the prose is really fucking cool. Like, but yeah, apart from that, outside of it, boy, a little hard to parse for me.
Yeah. very cool. Didn't have enough room to breathe.
Mhm.
Like the creepy twin. I wish I knew what was going on.
Yeah. All right, should we move on to Sin Bin?
Yeah, Chili, take on Sin Bin.
All right, cool. So Sin Bin, I think, was what I wanted. Was what if I had a hopes for like what are the worst stories of the week going to be? This would have been it, if that makes sense. It ended up being, what, in my opinion, one of the better stories of the week. But this is kind of where I thought the bar should have been. Like, okay, we have people who are going through something. It's made very clear what they're going through. They address it. They deal with it. They try their best. All of the pieces that were asked for are kind of here.
Mhm.
So we at least have that.
Mhm.
I had a feeling this was going to resonate with me more than it would the other judges. I definitely do struggle. All of my closest friends are friends from kindergarten. And so I've done a ton of work to maintain and develop and keep those relationships. I know how hard that is. This is a cool story, and it addresses, you picked a good week. We're all parents, so we all, at least to some extent, get this. It was very relatable. It worked for me. So when I say this would have been my hope for the worst of the week, I'm saying, like, I wish all stories were at least this good. That's a much kinder way to say the exact same thing that I was saying.
Yeah.
I wish all the other stories were at least doing what this story did. And I think what this story did was serviceable. It's fine. In my mind, it was kind of the front runner until, well, it's the second to last story, so you can gather. But it worked. It worked well enough for me. It resonated fine. No one likes axe throwing. Maybe somebody does. I don't know. I've never tried it, so who knows? Maybe it's good. I shouldn't shit on it. If you
It's kind of fun.
no axe shaming, no axe shaming. But go someone else talk. I'm gonna get myself in trouble.
Yeah, like you said, this was exactly what I expected from this week. Is like, it has all the elements in it, and it's just delivered too perfectly. Like, I don't believe that any of these people they just don't seem nuanced enough. Like, the talk that Kelvin and Matt have in the parking lot is just too, he knows exactly what to say, and Matt just accepts it and moves on. And while I think that actually could have worked with these characters because they specify that they're parents, and like sometimes you have to talk to your 3-year-old in very direct terms and say these things, and maybe that's just his parenting style. And if he uses it on his 40-year-old friend and it works, hey, that's great. But that was never said. So like, it just kind of actually seems as if this is like rote, now we're going to resolve things, and now you're going to accept that resolution, and now we move on, etc.
Yep. I also get it. And again, like you, Chili, many of my friends I'm still friends with from high school. And it takes a lot of work to stay friends with people for that long. I thought I was going to be reading a story about a guy who was, this almost led up into a very interesting place where I thought it was going to be a story about a guy who was trying to maintain relationships with his friends after acknowledging that he had a problem with drinking. But then it wasn't that.
Oh yeah, I see. Because that comes up, like, that alcohol is kind of always a thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, I really want to be 2 beers deep, but I can't be. And I thought there was going to be an interesting thing in here about the loss of relationships that come when you get sober, or when somebody in your group gets sober and everybody wants to maintain that friendship.
That would have been cool.
Yeah.
So it was like, I had this moment where I wanted to care so much about this, but then the thing I cared about didn't happen.
Yeah.
So that's,
it was sort of thrown in as an errant detail, but you clung on to it as something. Oh, here's a thing. And
Yeah.
I totally get that now that you're saying it. That would have been a neat direction, and it would have
Yeah.
elevated the story to give it something else to sort of focus on, because not enough was happening here. I think that's kind of the consensus. Like, this is fine, but we need a little more. Like, and you could do better. So do better.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Where are we?
I think Penguin.
Yep.
It's
All right, the final story in our selection here is Half by Thran Guy. And this is also a story that uses the tell and not so much show, and it friggin' works. So like, this is one of those options when you can break the rule, because it's another short story. I can't remember, 800 words maybe?
I think it was
700?
six.
Yeah.
698.
And basically what it does is it sets up a weird circumstance, which is something that Thrangai does. I've read before, where he's like, this weird thing happened, and this is all the fallout. And it's because that the fallout is so, the examples that he chooses to, that he uses in order to illustrate exactly what this, half the population has just, is inaccessible. You can see them as ghosts, but you can't talk to them. You can't give them things. You can't interact at all. And what happens if that happens to these people? So it kind of is told from the point of view, our narrator is, his wife disappeared and she's now 7 months pregnant. And like, what do you do when your kid is going to be a world away, but you know that they're there? And like, how do you deal with that? And sometimes how you deal with that is you put the blinders on and you just, you let somebody rob you blind, because like, this is not the world you want to live in. Just live in the world that's in front of you, and kind of try to ignore what's going on over there, because it's awful. It's terrible. And wow, this was powerful.
Yeah. It's this was great. This was what I was hoping for in this week. I really, really liked this one. Like, I'm going back and reading it again and having trouble talking right now because it's like, it really sucks you in. I think that even though it was very, very short, I don't feel like it needed to be longer. Like, I wanted, like, there's a part of me that kind of wants it to be longer, in that I kind of want to play some more with this T-Rift and this world, but the story doesn't need it.
No. No, I agree. I felt, as you said, like very sucked in. I think the story, could have been told really at any time, but now is certainly a perfect time for it, where our relationships are strained and tested, and we don't have access to just be physically with people. I don't think that this story is a one-to-one allegory for what we're all going through now, but it certainly makes sense in the context of what we're going through now. And it's not really hard to step into this.
And he kind of set it up at the beginning where he talks about using filters. And so you think, oh, it's going pandemic, and then bam, no, that is not what he did.
No, it made a really cool turn there. And yeah, the best stories like this, I don't think they necessarily have to make you feel anything, but they do raise that question of like, what the hell would I do? Like, how would I feel if this were happening to me? And if that raises that kind of curiosity, that's what keeps a story memorable. It's what allows you to continue to chew on it for, months, maybe even years later, as the best stories that I've read from Thunderdome have done. Like, I still think about some of the stories that like put me in it and made me ask those kinds of questions. And this was painful. It was powerful. And yeah, it was, as you said, kind of exactly, I guess, what everyone was hoping for this week, something to really, sink your teeth into. So well done.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Flurp wrote The Right Things, and none of us have had time to read it.
Okay.
So like, literally, that's the title of the story, is The Right Things.
Right.
And you know what? I will, when I post a judgment post, I will crit this, but it's not going to get a chance to be.
I haven't seen any of it. I haven't seen any of it at all. All I will say is, Flurp, capitalize your titles. Is it a good guess? Did I nail it?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Flurp, capitalize your titles. Okay, there we go. That's all I've got. Sorry, Flurp.
Yep. So yeah, this is the limit of fast judging being good judging, because if we judge too fast, if you want to post a redemption after the timeline, or like before judging.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to throw you two into the hot mess with me, but I'm going to go out and say it. This is probably the best judging ever done on Thunderdome. I mean, this quickly from people with parents, and we've got video shit to share with all y'all. Come at us, or come at me. I'm not going to speak for you guys. If you want to jump on this horrible shit wagon that I'm starting, best judging ever, at me, brawl me. I don't give a shit. Go ahead. We're amazing. So there you go. Well, yeah.
He says not having any personal time.
And we haven't judged yet, so we should do that. I guess we should decide we should do that. So you want to start us off with where you're thinking?
I don't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of debate on this one. I feel like debating HMs and DMs is going to be a little longer, because I feel like the clear winner is Throngai.
Yep.
And I feel like
easy.
And I feel like you could make the argument for, let me bring up our
Looking
our
at the
thing here.
numbers, I don't even know if an HM or two are necessary. If anyone was to get one, it seems like it would probably be cutouts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel
And
like
that's fair.
Mhm.
yeah. I feel like cutouts might get the only HM.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but it deserves a mention, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, the parts where it's good, it's really, really good.
Yes.
Like all the
Yeah.
stuff with the barber is really solid. And so I think that seems fair.
Yeah. It was the closest to what I was really looking for this week as well.
Mhm.
Along with half.
Cool.
And I think in terms of a loser, it's I
don't think I'm gonna be able to push anyone off of the man called M here. I'd like to, but I don't think I'm gonna die on that hill.
Well, that's the thing is like I did not like Chair Chucker's story at all, but I don't know whether it's like if it's obviously worse than the man called M, or if it's just like I know what Chair Chucker can do, and so this is especially disappointing.
We don't want to get into that. That started a whole
Right.
brawl last week.
Yeah, that started a whole brawl last
I
week.
think
That's
Chair
that's
Chucker
the only,
doesn't
to be fair, that's
brawl.
the only reason I won is
So,
because people expected
That's
more. from
no,
sitting
no,
here.
that's you wrote the best story. Okay. You wrote the best story, and that's why you won. And when you win, you win.
Okay.
So what I will say though is I don't think I needed to know who wrote them. I will remember Bras and Babes or whatever it was, and I will not remember Shark versus Platypus. That story is going to be a thing that I don't think about at all. And I can't imagine I'm going to forget this other, Romeo and Juliet set in the fraternity, whatever thing, like with
Right.
ketchup condiments. It's got stuff happening in it. It's got
It
things
does.
in it.
Does.
I
It
don't know.
does.
Like I'm more inclined to judge it more favorably. It's not escaping a DM, but it doesn't take the
No.
loss for me.
I'm hearing that I'm kind of inclined to agree. Like Shark vs. Platypus is definitely a more competently written story, but nothing happens.
Mhm.
But at the same time, it is a writing competition.
Yeah, and there's just so much specifically wrong with tenses and punctuation and verb usage.
This is why I'm not going to die on the hill. My gut is telling me not to go for a loss for Bras and Babes, or if that's the name of it. I don't even remember. I guess I don't remember everything. So whatever. It is what it is. As long as I don't think Platypus Shark thing should escape a negative mention.
Oh no, it should definitely get a DM.
Absolutely not.
So it's cool. I'm good.
Yeah.
You are the head judge. It's you.
Okay. So for me, I'm going to say Man Called M is, again, losing. Come on, get your tenses straight, get your punctuation right. You can do this eventually. We believe in you. And Chair Checker takes a DM with Stripper, Sharks, and Platypus, and then Half takes the win.
Any other DMs?
There was a lot in the soggy middle this week.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I don't feel like everybody knows what they did.
Yeah, it seems like it. I think honestly, if I'm looking at the scores, the one that's getting closest to it is Comfort Food, which is weird because it did a lot of things right. I don't want to DM Comfort Food. But,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to DM any of them.
It's a different level of what worked and what didn't work.
For sure. Cool.
Yeah.
So we got Judgment?
Yeah, I think we got Judgment. I will make a Judgment post after I eat some food.
Cool. All right. I'm going to end the recording here. How do I stop the recording? Oh, there we go. Stop recording. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.